Let me ask you something, and I want you to answer honestly, not out loud, just to yourself. Have you ever sat next to a woman you care about and felt like you were slowly disappearing? Not because she yelled, not because she cheated, but because something quiet changed. She still texts, she still laughs sometimes, she still says she cares, yet somehow you feel smaller than you used to. Less confident, less certain, like you're constantly trying to earn something that used to be free. If that sounds familiar, stay with me, because what I'm about to say might hurt a little, but it might also save you years of confusion. Most men don't get trapped in bad relationships because they're weak. They get trapped because they're hopeful. Hope tells you, she just needs time. Hope tells you, she's been hurt before. Hope tells you, if I show up better, love her harder, stay calmer, she'll come back. Psychology has a name for this. It's called intermittent reinforcement. When emotional warmth is given inconsistently, the human brain clings harder, not looser. Studies show it's the same mechanism behind gambling addiction. You don't stay because you're happy. You stay because sometimes you're happy. And women, often without malice, can sense when a man is operating from fear of loss instead of self-respect. That's when certain sentences start to appear. Sentences that sound soft, reasonable, even caring, but they aren't neutral. They're signals. Here's the uncomfortable truth most men aren't taught. Women rarely leave suddenly. They leave emotionally first, verbally second, physically last. By the time a woman clearly walks away, she's already tried, consciously or unconsciously, to create distance through language. Not to hurt you, but to relieve her own internal conflict. This video is not about blaming women, and it's definitely not about teaching manipulation. This is about listening properly, because when a woman tells you certain things, she is not confused. She is communicating, just not in the way men are taught to hear. Men hear words literally. Women speak emotionally. So when she says something that feels vague, gentle, or even self-sacrificing, psychology tells us to look at function, not tone. Ask yourself, what does this sentence allow her to avoid? What responsibility does it quietly remove? What expectation does it dissolve? Research on attachment styles shows that avoidant partners often use emotionally reasonable language to justify disengagement, not because they're evil, but because confrontation feels unsafe to them. And here's where I'm going to challenge you gently, as a woman speaking to men. If you ignore these signals, you don't become loyal. You become convenient. If you stay silent when clarity is offered, even indirectly, you train her nervous system to believe she doesn't have to choose you fully. And over time, attraction does not grow in ambiguity. It decays. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through 5 specific things women say that are not innocent, not temporary, and not meant to be argued with. Each one sounds reasonable. Each one sounds fixable. Each one has convinced millions of good men to stay far too long. And before you panic, no, this does not mean walk away from every woman who struggles. It means learn the difference between growth and exit language. Because a man with self-respect doesn't need to beg for clarity. He recognizes it when it's already been spoken. So listen carefully, not with fear, not with ego, but with awareness. The moment you truly understand what these sentences mean, you stop chasing, you stop over-explaining, and something powerful happens. You choose yourself, calmly. Now let's begin with the first one. 1. I'm just not ready right now. Let me say this slowly, because this sentence has confused more men than almost any other. When a woman tells you, I'm just not ready right now, your mind immediately fills in the blanks. You think, she needs time. She's been hurt before. She's scared of commitment. If I'm patient, if I don't pressure her, if I prove I'm different, she'll be ready. Now here's the uncomfortable part, and I say this as a woman who understands how women think. Most of the time, this sentence is not about timing. It's about certainty. Psychology is very clear on this. When people genuinely desire something, a job, a move, a relationship, uncertainty doesn't look passive. It looks anxious. They ask questions. They seek reassurance. They move closer, not further away. But I'm not ready does something very specific. It freezes the situation. It keeps you available. It removes accountability. And it quietly places you in a waiting room with no clock. Ask yourself this and answer honestly. Has she said she's not ready, but still expects emotional support? Still expects your attention? Still expects consistency from you? Because when readiness is real, boundaries are clear. When avoidance is happening, boundaries are convenient. Attachment research shows that avoidant partners often use time-based language to delay decisions they emotionally don't want to make. Not because they're cruel, but because choosing feels like loss. And here's what most men miss. A woman who is truly not ready limits intimacy. A woman who is unsure limits commitment but keeps intimacy. That difference matters. So when she says, "I'm not ready right now," listen to what's not being said. She's not saying, "I want you, but life is complicated." She's saying, "I don't want to lose you, but I'm not choosing you either." And that's a dangerous middle ground for a man, because hope keeps you investing, but ambiguity keeps her comfortable. Let me ask you something, and this is important. If she met a man she was deeply certain about, do you honestly believe she would tell him she's not ready? Psychological studies on attraction show that emotional readiness accelerates around perceived value. People suddenly heal faster when desire is strong. Commitment doesn't wait for perfect conditions. It responds to clarity. And this is where men often sabotage themselves. Instead of stepping back, they step up. They overgive. They become extra understanding. They silence their needs. But here's the truth no one tells you. Patience without boundaries doesn't make you attractive. It makes you predictable. And predictability without commitment slowly erodes desire. This doesn't mean she's evil. It doesn't mean she's manipulating you. It means she's emotionally undecided. And undecided people should never be given relationship-level access. So what should a grounded man do when he hears this? Not argue, not convince, not wait indefinitely. He acknowledges the statement and adjusts his investment to match her clarity. Because self-respect is not forcing a decision. It's refusing to live in limbo. When a woman is ready, you don't feel confused. You don't feel anxious. You don't feel like you're walking on eggshells. Readiness feels calm. And if you feel constantly unsettled, the answer has already been given, just not in the words you hoped for. Let's move to the second sentence, because this one sounds kind, but carries an even deeper warning. 2. You deserve someone better than me. This sentence sounds gentle, almost noble. When a woman says, "You deserve someone better than me," most men feel two things at the same time. First, relief. It sounds like honesty. Second, responsibility. You feel pulled to reassure her, to say, "No, you're enough. I choose you." And that instinct is exactly why this sentence works. But let's slow this down and look at what psychology tells us, not what we hope it means. On the surface, it sounds like low self-esteem. But emotionally, it often functions as permission to disengage without guilt. Here's why. Research on relationship exit language shows that people who want to leave, but don't want to be seen as the bad one, often frame the breakup as concern for the other person's well-being. It shifts the focus away from their lack of desire and onto your supposed future happiness. In other words, it's not about you deserving better. It's about her not wanting to be better for you. Ask yourself this question, and don't rush it. If someone truly believes you deserve better, why would they stay? Why would they continue to accept your time, your effort, your emotional presence? The truth is, this sentence does two things at once. It lowers expectations, and it protects her self-image. By saying, "You deserve better," she removes pressure to grow, change, or fully invest, while still being seen as kind. And here's the trap men fall into. They hear this and think, she doesn't see her own value. She needs reassurance. If I love her harder, she'll finally feel worthy. But psychology is very clear on this. You cannot convince someone into desire by validating them. Attraction doesn't grow from reassurance. It grows from alignment. When a woman is emotionally invested, she doesn't push you away by diminishing herself. She pulls you closer by inviting you into her life. So when she says, "You deserve someone better than me," listen carefully. She's not asking you to stay. She's giving herself an exit, while hoping you'll make it painless. And here's where I'm going to gently challenge you as a man. If you respond by saying, "No, you're perfect. I don't need anyone else. I'll wait," you don't look loyal. You look afraid to lose. And fear is not attractive. This doesn't mean she's manipulating you intentionally. Many women say this when they feel guilt, confusion, or internal conflict. But regardless of intention, the impact is the same. You stay. She drifts. Resentment builds quietly, and over time she begins to respect you less, not because you're kind, but because you ignored her honesty. Here's the grounded response most men never consider. Instead of arguing with the statement, you accept it, not dramatically, not bitterly, but calmly. Because when someone tells you they cannot meet you where you are, believe them. A man with self-respect doesn't try to prove his worth to someone who's already stepping back. He recognizes that mutual desire doesn't require persuasion. And when you stop trying to save someone from their own words, you save yourself. 3. I don't ask you for anything. This sentence sounds peaceful, almost ideal. When a woman says, I don't ask you for anything, many men feel relieved. No pressure, no drama, no expectations. You think, she's low maintenance. She doesn't nag. This is what healthy looks like. But let me challenge that assumption, calmly, clearly, and with respect. Because psychologically, this sentence is rarely about independence. More often, it's about emotional disengagement. Healthy relationships involve needs. Connection creates desire for closeness, contribution, and effort from both sides. So when a woman says she doesn't need anything from you, the real question is not whether she's strong. The real question is, why has she stopped wanting from you? Attachment research shows that when emotional investment drops, people reduce requests, not to be kind, but because asking feels pointless. The nervous system stops expecting responsiveness. And here's where men often misunderstand what's happening. You interpret silence as peace. She experiences silence as distance. You think, at least I'm not doing anything wrong. She thinks, I don't feel safe depending on him. Let me be very clear, and because this matters. A woman who is attracted and emotionally connected wants impact. She wants to feel felt. She wants to matter enough to ask. When she stops asking, it's often because she's already started detaching emotionally, sometimes without even realizing it herself. Now here's the part that might sting a little, but it's said with care. Some men prefer this dynamic because it protects their ego. No requests means no risk of failure. No needs means no accountability, but comfort is not connection. And over time, this emotional flatness kills polarity. Desire fades not because there's conflict, but because there's nothing at stake. So let me ask you something. Honestly, does she truly ask nothing? Or has she simply stopped believing you'll meet her where she is? Because those are very different realities. And here's the advice part, the wake-up moment. If you hear this sentence and feel proud instead of curious, that's your cue to pause. A grounded man doesn't celebrate emotional distance. He doesn't confuse silence with harmony. He checks in, not defensively, not anxiously, but with presence, not to fix, not to force, but to understand. And if you discover that she genuinely no longer wants anything from you emotionally, then the truth is already clear. A relationship without needs is not freedom. It's disconnection disguised as peace, and staying in that space doesn't make you mature. It slowly trains you to accept less than mutual desire. 4. I love you, but I'm not in love with you. When a woman says this, most men hear the first half and cling to it. She loves me. So there's still something here. So maybe this can be fixed. But psychologically, this sentence is not a bridge, it's a separation line. Let me explain this simply. Love, in this context, usually means attachment, history, familiarity, comfort, shared experiences. Being in love means desire, curiosity, pull, emotional and romantic engagement. And those two things do not operate on the same system in the brain. Neuroscience shows that attachment is linked to safety and predictability, while romantic desire thrives on emotional presence, polarity, and aliveness. One can exist without the other. And when desire fades, attachment often remains out of guilt or habit. So when a woman says this sentence, she is telling you something very specific. I care about you, but I don't feel pulled toward you anymore. That's not confusion. That's clarity, softened. And here's where men get stuck. They try to argue desire back into existence. They reminisce. They remind her of history. They promise change. But desire does not respond to memory. It responds to how someone feels in your presence now. This is the hard truth most men resist. You cannot negotiate attraction. You cannot reassure someone into wanting you, and you cannot logic your way into being desired. Now let me be very honest with you, calmly, as a woman speaking to men. When a woman says this and you stay, hoping to win her back, you often do the opposite. You reinforce safety, but sacrifice polarity. You increase availability, but reduce mystery. You show loyalty, but lose leverage. And slowly, respect erodes, not because you're weak, but because you ignored reality. This sentence is often spoken when a woman has already emotionally moved into the role of caretaker, not partner. She feels responsible for your feelings. She doesn't want to hurt you, so she softens the truth. But softened truth is still truth. And here's the most important part. A woman who is still in love doesn't need to clarify the difference. She shows it. You feel it. There is no ambiguity. So if you hear this sentence, don't ask, "How do I fix this?" Ask instead, "Is this the kind of love that allows me to be chosen freely?" Because attachment without desire turns a relationship into obligation, and obligation slowly turns into resentment for both of you. 5. This is just how I am. When a woman says, "This is just how I am," it usually comes after a conversation that mattered. You brought up something you felt, something you needed, something that didn't sit right, and instead of curiosity, instead of reflection, you got a wall. Now let's be very clear. This sentence is not about personality. Psychologically, it's a boundary against change. Healthy people say things like, "I'll think about that. I didn't realize that affected you." Let's see how we can meet in the middle. "This is just how I am," says something very different. It says, "I'm not willing to examine this. I'm not open to adjusting. I'm closing the conversation." And here's where many men misunderstand what's happening. They think, "She's being honest. At least she's not fake. I shouldn't try to change her." But listen carefully. Relationships are not about changing who someone is. They're about how two people adapt to each other. When someone refuses adaptation entirely, they're opting out of partnership while staying in the relationship. Research on long-term relationship satisfaction shows that flexibility, responsiveness, and mutual adjustment are key predictors of lasting attraction. Rigid self-definition, on the other hand, often appears when emotional investment has dropped. So when she says, "This is just how I am," the real message is often, "I'm comfortable with the relationship as it is, but not invested enough to grow it." Now here's the part where I'm going to speak directly to men, calmly but honestly. If you accept this sentence without question, you train yourself to accept emotional neglect. You tell yourself you're being mature, but what you're actually doing is lowering your standards to keep access. And that never ends well. A grounded man doesn't demand change, but he also doesn't stay where growth is off the table, because attraction does not survive stagnation. Respect does not survive one-sided compromise, and love does not survive emotional rigidity. So if you hear this sentence, don't escalate, don't argue, don't explain yourself into exhaustion. Simply observe. If "this is just how I am" consistently means your needs go unmet, then the message is already complete. You're not asking for too much, you're asking the wrong person. And staying after hearing this doesn't make you patient, it makes you invisible. All right, let me end this in a way most men are never spoken to. Calmly, directly, and without sugarcoating. Here's the controversial truth. Most men don't lose women because they're bad men. They lose women because they stay when the relationship has already ended, just quietly. Every sentence we talked about today wasn't random. They weren't accidents. They weren't miscommunication. They were emotional disclosures. And when you ignore them, you're not being loving. You're being avoidant of reality. Here's what I want you to really sit with. A woman who wants you does not make you guess. She does not speak in permanent ambiguity. She does not slowly remove herself and ask you to stay anyway. And no, walking away doesn't mean you failed. It means you finally listened. Men are often taught that endurance is love, that patience fixes everything, that holding on longer makes you stronger. But psychology shows us something different. Self-respect is not loud. It doesn't argue, it doesn't beg. It recognizes when the door is already closing and chooses dignity over denial. And here's the part most people won't say out loud. When you stay after clarity has been given, you don't deepen connection. You dilute attraction. So if any of these sentences felt familiar, if something in your chest tightened while listening, that's not fear. That's awareness waking up. I want you to comment below, honestly. Which sentence have you heard before? What did you do when you heard it? I read those comments. And when I can, I reach out, because you're not alone in this, even if it feels that way. This isn't about blaming women. It's about teaching men how to stop abandoning themselves. And once you do that, something interesting happens. You stop chasing clarity, because you finally respect it when it shows up.